doctoral work at University of Padova in Italy, and also has served on the faculties of a few different universities throughout Europe. His research is generally on sustainable supply chains, particularly focusing on agri-food supply chains, which is quite relevant to us here in Wisconsin and the upper Midwest. He's published widely in the top journals in operations management, supply chain management, and sustainability. And so it's a real opportunity to have him talk with us today. The title of his presentation for today is Digitalization of Agri-Food Supply Chains and the Impact on Social Sustainability and Fair Value Redistribution. So with that, Dr. Formentini, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I would like to thank Michelle and Greg for this invitation, and it's really a pleasure to be with you and also to share our, let's say, our current research, but also, let's say, some projects really centered around the topic of food supply chains and, of course, digitalization. So first of all, let me share the slides, and so we see if it works. So here we go. Please let me know if you can see the slides. Everything's fine?
Looks
Yeah.
good.
Can you hear me well? Perfect. Good, good. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Also, thank you for the introduction. As you can see, let's say today, let's say if I can summarize this presentation, is really focusing on sustainability, circularity, and of course, equitable value redistribution along the agri-food supply chain, especially focusing on our PRIN project, which we are currently managing in Italy, in Trento, with also the collaboration of the University of Udine, Genova, Palermo, and University of Salento. So we have a national network of universities working on the topic of digitalization in agri-food supply chains. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you also because we are at the interface with many different let's say, perspectives, and also supply chain management, AI, digitalization. So I really hope we can build a network, to have a conversation. Yeah, this is the objective. Also, since we are, let's say, in the middle of this project, we also great to receive feedback and also opportunities for, yeah, collaborations and further developing our work. I would like just to spend briefly a couple of minutes just to introduce myself. I'm currently an associate professor at the University of Trento, the Department of Information Engineering and Computer Science, but I spent basically the previous years abroad at the University of Bath and Cass Business School in London in the UK, and also in Nantes in France at Audencia Business School. So more in the context of business schools, and now I'm back in Italy with a more engineering oriented, let's say, focus, which in my opinion is also good to be at the interface between engineering and management, also because I have a background in management engineering. And also I had the pleasure also to visit the US during my PhD. I visited Miami University in Ohio. And also I'm currently also having collaborations with the Department of Supply Chain Management at Auburn University in Alabama. And let's say I've been working of course, on supply chain management with a strong focus on collaboration, integration, especially in agri-food supply chains, and of course, a strong focus also on sustainability, and more recently also on circular economy. And I'm also very interested in buyer-supplier relationships, again, with a perspective on strategic sourcing, again, with a focus on collaboration and also mutually beneficial relationships. And these are some of the companies I had the pleasure also to work with. You can see here in the context of food products, Barilla, and I will introduce also the case of Barilla at the end of this presentation, since I believe it's a very good example of value redistribution and also the adoption of digital tools that can create the basis for, let's say, a more effective redistribution of value, especially in the context of negotiation and pricing and supply chain contracts. And also I had the opportunity also to investigate the ILLI case study when focusing on sustainability certifications. So, in terms of the objectives of this presentation, I would like to, yeah, to provide an overview of this research journey, starting from one of the most recent, let's say, topics I had the opportunity and the pleasure to investigate in the last few years, which is food loss and waste management. That was, let me tell you, something that, in my opinion, was very important from a sustainability, also from an ethical point of view. And that also, again, was creating the opportunity to connect again with digitalization, sustainability, and of course, always keeping sustainability and supply chain perspective, which, in my opinion, are, of course, central to my investigation. And also the opportunity also to discuss and maybe to have the opportunity also to think about different research and methodological approaches. Since here I would like to talk about systematic literature reviews, in-depth case studies, but also conceptual elaboration. And of course, right now also we are working with multiple case studies in the context of our national project. So again, as an opportunity to present these different research directions, and why not to connect and maybe also then to continue the conversation also for future collaborations. Let me also tell you that for sure, being now in this department of information engineering and computer science, there is a very strong focus on artificial intelligence. This is one of the pillars of this department. So we are also working on artificial intelligence more in the context of manufacturing, and it will be extremely interesting also to bring artificial intelligence also in the context of agri-food supply chains. Knowing that also here in Trento, let me tell you, there is a strong interest also of industrial actors. And here in Trento, also we have a very strong participation of cooperatives. Basically, here in Trentino, in the Trentino province and region, basically it's one of the most important regions for cooperatives, especially in the agri-food industry. Just to name a few important actors, maybe you heard about Melinda, which is a very important cooperative for the production of apples and other types of fruit. And then, of course, in the dairy industry, we have, for example, the cooperative Latte Trento, which is a very important one, producing, for example, cheese with the Trentin Grana brand. So basically, Grana Padano or Parmigiano Reggiano style type of cheese. So I would like to start, first of all, presenting, let's say, the most recent focus on food loss and waste. And I also hope there are also many of you that are also working on food loss and waste management, also because that will be an opportunity also for collaboration. Let me tell you that already when I was in the UK, so more or less 8, 9 years ago, I started working on food waste management and especially practices with a stronger focus at the retail level in UK, Italy, and Spain. With some case studies to understand to what extent, especially retailers, are implementing food waste management practices in their processes. And of course, it was important also to understand what are the implications also for managing food companies and their suppliers, and also, of course, also the implications at the local level, let's say in terms also of society, and basically having the opportunity to move back to Italy in Trento. It was during the COVID, so it was really a challenging moment, but we had the opportunity to connect with a local charity completely run by volunteers, which is called the Trentino Solidale. And at that time, let's say they were playing a huge role during the COVID pandemic because they were able to collect food from restaurants and hotels. They had to close basically during the pandemic. So they were able to collect this food and to redistribute to people in need. So they really had a very important role in that challenging moment, 2020, 2021. So it was clear that there was an opportunity to continue working and investigating food loss waste management. And also, I had also the opportunity to get some funding from the University of Trento, this research project on food waste during COVID-19. So basically some resources. I had the opportunity to use also then to hire a research assistant and to work on this project. And then also another small project at the national level, working with a platform, working on food surplus redistribution. And basically, now that's the starting point for this presentation. With an interesting focus, especially on digitalization. What is the role played by digital tools to basically to address food waste issues along the supply chain? And also, what is the role played by platforms, for example? Having the opportunity to investigate the case study of the Regusto platform for food surplus collection and redistribution, let's say all around Italy. Of course, I would like, of course, to start also from the very important positioning of food waste management research around, of course, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and of course, especially considering the SDG number 12, which is around the responsible consumption and production, especially the 12.3, which is especially, let's say, appropriate for addressing food loss and waste. Yeah, there was also the opportunity also to manage at the time a special issue on food loss and waste management during the pandemic. And so that was a special issue that we managed with some colleagues, Ludovica Principato and Luca Secondi, in the journal Socio-Economic Planning Sciences. So if you are interested in the topic, also it may be also interesting for you also to have a look at that special issue that we published on that journal. But I would like to start also knowing that today we have the opportunity to interact also with an audience very interested on digitalization and AI, starting also from basically this initial research project using a systematic literature review to identify the role played by digital technologies for basically addressing food loss and waste prevention and reduction in agri-food supply chains. And that paper was the result of a collaboration with Caterina Trevisan, she moved to Copenhagen Business School, and now she's an assistant professor at Copenhagen Business School, and that was basically the starting project also for her, let's say, entering the research context, let's say. So, I hope this can be the opportunity also that we continue the discussion, knowing that, of course, we've been focusing on digitalization, digital transformation, Industry 4.0, and of course, now we are talking about also Industry 5.0, right, with human-centric, let's say, innovation and digitalization. But in our case, really considering digital transformation, food loss and waste prevention and reduction, not just, let me tell you, at the end of the supply chain, focusing on households or on retailers. Our focus was to understand what is the value played by digital technologies throughout the entire supply chain? Because we believe that we need to pay much more attention also to the upstream part of the supply chain. So focusing on food companies, on farmers, on input providers. So there is for sure an important opportunity also to consider the upper part, the upstream part of supply chains. and also understanding also what is the impact, again, in terms of environmental, economic, and social sustainability, and also integrating also more circular economy oriented perspective. So that was our starting point, and we understood that, of course, despite a very strong focus on food loss and waste management, there is the need also to attract more attention also in the context of operations, supply chain management. Probably, and we will also come to this later with another paper that we had the opportunity also to publish, the fact that sometimes, at least in our field of supply chain management, scholars are somehow not considering the important value of food waste. So maybe there is the need to perceive food waste even beyond, let's say, the operational waste that usually we have in manufacturing. So there is an ethical, also let me tell you, value of waste. And probably that's why we need to pay much more attention to investigating food loss and waste management, given the ethical and social sustainability implications of reducing food waste along the supply chain. So basically, the starting point was really to understand the state of the art of the literature on digital technologies, let's say to address the food loss and waste management problems. And of course, also to think about implementation. So, what are the main technologies used, and also how can we develop basically technologies, let's say, and to find the gaps basically in this literature map to advance also the industry. Of course, now the paper has been published a couple of years ago. There are new articles and also new literature reviews I've seen let's say, on Google Scholar. But of course, these were the articles that at the time we managed to, let's say, to review around 35 articles that again demonstrate the fact that when we consider digital technologies, agri-food supply chains, and food loss and waste, of course, there is an opportunity, in my opinion, to increase the focus, especially on the upstream part of the supply chain. And we started, of course, with a framework to analyze these articles. So this is our framework. Of course, if you are interested, you can find all the details in the article. But let me go straight to the main findings. And here we are. So for sure, focusing on these important digital technologies, starting from active intelligent packaging, artificial intelligence, that, as we said, is probably one of the most important, let's say, themes that currently is attracting the attention now in so many fields. Big data analytics, blockchain, digital platforms, and we will see an example in the next few slides. Digital twins, as well as the opportunity, to basically to simulate and also to manage basically simulations and real time also simulations of our supply chain, enterprise information systems, and many other technologies that are used also to let's say to manage food loss and waste. And so you see here in the paper, so we are able to see the purpose of these different technologies and also how they can help in terms of impact on food loss and waste reduction at different levels of the supply chain. So the paper may be useful. So if you want to see, let's say, then specific technologies and maybe also to have a starting point, then if you want to enter in depth with any of these technologies. And so basically starting from the analysis of the literature, it was possible to see that different technologies, they may play a different role in different processes of the agri-food supply chain. So for sure, as you can see, active intelligent packaging, they have an important role, especially downstream in the way we are at the inventory and storage level, in the distribution, at the retail, of course, level, to extend the lifespan of products, to provide information. Then, of course, we see that AI may play a role also on a broader set of processes, big data analytics, blockchain, especially in terms of transparency and traceability, also in the context of inventory and distribution. While digital platforms, as you can see, starting from consumption, of course, food sharing and redistributions, and what we noticed, the literature was focusing more downstream in the role of digital platforms, while we believe that, of course, platforms they may play a role also in the other processes. You see here there is a gap in production, handling, logistics, and retail. So an opportunity to investigate further the role of digital platforms, also again more upstream the supply chain level. Digital twins, probably digital twins and food loss and waste management. There is still quite under-investigated role, also played by GPS. While you can see there, then the other technologies, for example, machine learning is quite pervasive throughout different processes as an opportunity then to process and let's say to analyze data, and why not also to provide also some more predictive results. RFID also may play a role. So this is the map emerging from our literature review. And also we provide also a research agenda to scholars in the field of agri-food supply chain management, food loss and waste management, but also, let's say, more technical, let's say, audience as an opportunity for people working in the digital, let's say, technology context. Why not also to inform our let's say supply chain scholars and also companies, also with opportunities emerging from these technologies. And for sure, from a research point of view, the theory, let's say the main papers are still quite theoretical, more focused probably on implementation. And we may also expand also the focus on the role played by theories. So we can review also phenomena and problems also more from a theory elaboration point of view. Of course, what emerges that, of course, that we have a literature which is still not very mature on digital technologies and food loss and waste management. And there are many explorative studies based on case studies and interviews, and probably we want to go beyond this exploratory stage in the literature, and also, why not, again, developing much more theoretical studies. And you can see here there is still the need to expand the focus on the upstream part of the supply chain, where probably we are not understanding the important role played by, for example, farmers or food companies. So we can expand our focus in the upstream part of the supply chain, and maybe a more quantitative also measurement could be developed. Of course, measurement is a very important focus in food loss and waste management research, and digital technologies, of course, may provide some important contributions in that direction. And you see here that probably we need also to improve the focus on economic considerations about the cost of digitalization. So we can see the value offered by technologies, but of course, there is the need also to develop a more economic and financial understanding of these technologies. And I would say also connecting with a more innovation management, also related literature, also the need to discuss and investigate the implications of digital technologies, also from a strategic point of view and also from a business model level. And you will see in the next slides, also we tried to initially to fill this gap, also understanding the role played by platforms, also in the way they can evolve, also, let's say, also to achieve opportunities also at the business model level. And so there are many, let's say, many opportunities also the contextual level. So we need, of course, to expand our understanding, of course, different types of companies, different types of products. There is a strong focus on developed countries. It would be interesting to understand What are the opportunities to use digital technologies also in emerging countries, developing countries? And that for sure, it's an important avenue for future research. And of course, also the fact that we need to think about regulations and policies and legislative frameworks also to promote food loss waste reduction through digital technologies. And also, we will discuss also later about this. We can discuss about technologies, but we need also to think about governance mechanisms. So, how it is possible for companies to implement technologies, but also to develop governance mechanisms that will incentivate, will govern, will control basically the implementation of these digital technologies, and also to drive the effective implementation in order to achieve, let's say, impact in terms of let's say, improving not just the economic results, but also the environmental and the social perspective. And of course, you see here also many times we are mentioning the role played by collaboration. But of course, again, how are we developing this collaboration? How are we improving this collaboration? Again, what are the incentives? What are the contracts? What are the opportunities to make sure that we are implementing effectively these technologies and we are achieving the results with the contribution of different supply chain actors? This is still an open question, which is not clearly, let's say, we haven't found a specific, let's say, answer in the literature that we reviewed. And also, you see here in terms of sustainability, also impact, again, a lack of quantitative measurement of the impact of food loss and waste reduction on sustainability. And yeah, lack of parameters, and also the fact that probably we need also to include a stronger circular economy perspective and initiatives, also to bring many other actors in the context of this collaborative approach. Yeah, so just let's say to conclude this first part of the presentation, and then of course I will be extremely happy to also to answer to your questions or maybe to start the discussion at the end of the presentation. We will also have time to discuss about this. So yeah, for sure, this is a starting point. So it is clear that digital technologies may play an important role, but we need to continue, let's say, investigating these digital technologies. Especially, let's say, the fact that yeah, food waste management is still under investigated to let's say, in our opinion, and yeah, of course, the need, let's say, as you can see here, not just to maximize efficiency at the single company level, but again, let's say, to take a broader supply chain perspective. And this is a common, I would say, a common problem. And that's why I was mentioning also the need for specific governance mechanism. So to bring together different actors, to develop collaborations, and of course, as we will see later, how to share value in a way, let's say, we're contributing to all these different actors. So if that was the starting point for our research on agri-food, food loss and waste management, let's say, perspective, we had then the opportunity really to consider the case of a platform. This platform is called Regusto. Regusto is an important platform operating in Italy. And we had really the opportunity to develop a longitudinal, in-depth case study, really to understand the role played by platforms in tackle and address the problem of food surplus redistribution. Maybe you're familiar with other types of platforms. For example, when I was in the UK, there was Olio, but also in Europe, Too Good To Go is a very famous platform, which is basically offering the opportunity, for example, to consumers to buy surplus food at the end of the day in restaurants, bakeries, bars at a lower price, so to reduce basically food waste. But of course, mm, many of these platforms have been focused more on the B2C part of the chain. And again, I was mentioning the B2B, the more industrial part, has been overlooked in terms of research, but also, let's say, in terms of let's say, industry examples, right? So there was the need to understand also how platforms can support redistribution, not just at the customer household level, but also, of course, even the farmer at the food company level. And so for this opportunity, we had the pleasure also to interact with Regusto and to notice that their business model has changed over time. So we mapped the evolution of this platform also to understand what are the implications from a digitalization point of view and also from a sustainability point of view. So Regusto is a platform which is bringing together many different stakeholders. Here you can see some recent numbers and basically originated by the startup Recuperiamo, born in 2016. And initially, this platform was starting from the B2C segment. So, but you see here, redistributing and reselling food surplus from basically restaurants, bakeries to the platform consumers. So it was just focusing on the final part, basically, of the supply chain. What happened? Now Regusto completely changed their focus, and now they're working at the business to business part of the basically the supply chain. So especially working with companies, food companies, they are donating their surplus, and then with non-profit organizations. So redistributing to volunteers, charities, and basically, yeah, organizations that are helping also people in need. It was very interesting that the platform in 2019 started to also to consider the role played by blockchain. So becoming in 2019 a blockchain-based multi-sided platform. And the new evolution is basically moving beyond food surplus redistribution, also starting to consider the redistribution of non-food products. So, for example, in the do-it-yourself context with the, let's say, with stores like Leroy Merlin in Italy and other companies basically selling basically products, physical products, not just food. And it was also interesting to understand that it was very important for them to measure the positive impact generated by the platform, also then measuring donations of their customers and their basically platform users in order to translate this reduction of emissions basically by donation through the donations using carbon credits, and we will come to this in a few slides. So this is the context of Regusto. They had to face basically the need to reposition themselves along the supply chain and also to change their business model, and in this direction digitalization is playing a role, as you can see here with the blockchain and the carbon credits, let's say, technological opportunities. Yeah, so of course, now I will go, let's say, quite fast on this part because, of course, there are different theoretical also positionings here: business model innovation and technology enabled multi-sided platforms. And you can see here, of course, many of you are interested in AI, but you know also that in the last years there has been a lot of attention on blockchain. So, what is the contribution offered by blockchain in the context of this platform? Then, I was already mentioning many times the fact that we have been overlooking and let's say forgetting also the role played by the upstream B2B part of the supply chain when we talk about food waste reduction and food redistribution. And also the fact that we need to develop a stronger understanding on measurement. And in this case, you will see that Regusto was able to translate food surplus redistribution, let's say the measurement, and translating into some measurements of CO2 reduction and the development of carbon credits that are becoming a sort of exchange for the companies and that will become a sort of important resource for the platform, also for the economic sustainability of the platform. By selling these carbon credits, the platform can become more economically sustainable and provide this service to their platform users and partners. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this. Of course, we're using a socio-technical theory perspective in understanding the functioning and the value provided by this platform, where, of course, technology, different actors, of course, also the way the structure of the platform is evolving, and also what are the main tasks that are performed by the platform, and of course, taking this lens to review, of course, the main results of our study. And yeah, these are the methodological insights of this study. Yeah, we tried really to get really an in-depth and reliable understanding of the platform with many different interviews with the key stakeholders of this initiative. And you can see here, this is the evolution of Regusto. I was mentioning at the beginning, the platform was founded, you see, especially with a focus at the B2C level. So the supply sides, restaurants, bars were providing their surplus to the platform, which was then redistributing to private users, to consumers. And that was really a sort of common business model for platforms at the time. I was mentioning Too Good To Go, Olio. And of course, the question for the company was how can we increase the sustainability of our platform? Really, economic and financial sustainability of our platform, right? It was a very crowded market, and many of these platforms were also not sustainable and also were not able to continue, let's say, in their business. So that's why in 2018, basically, you see here that municipalities were entering no, the platform as users. So the business model was changing, addressing the non-profit sector. So you see, in that case, Regusto was not interacting with private users anymore, but they were serving charities and interacting with municipalities then, of course, to manage the supply side, companies donating surplus. But of course, the key question was how can we keep the business sustainable? In this, let's say, in this direction, in 2019, blockchain was introduced to help, let's say, companies to, first of all, to trace and to map the donations, but also then to translate the donations into carbon credits. So companies were paying now for the development of these carbon credits that then they were creating the basis, of course, for their disclosure to show that through donations they were able to reduce their impact at the environmental level. And then, of course, creating, let's say, these tokens, let's say, this important resource for the platform to be more financially sustainable in order then to serve municipalities and also charities. So you see here how the business model and the structure of the business model was evolving. Then you see here an evolution, of course, of this revenue model. Again, with the further development of carbon credits sold not just to supply side companies, but also to other, let's say, in the current business model, you see, selling also to other non-transactional, let's say, companies, also the carbon credits. So, and also in the middle, the extension also to non-food products. So, what can we learn from this study? that, of course, the introduction of a new digital technology helped Regusto to evolve their platforms and also to exploit an opportunity, no? The need for companies not just to donate and to redistribute surplus food, but of course, the opportunity also then to buy back carbon credits they can reuse for their disclosure and to show that they were able to reduce their impact on the environment. But at the same time, also selling the carbon credits generated by donating companies also to third-party companies, also able to contribute, let's say, in this way to the platform. So now, let's say this is a little bit methodological. Let me just skip, let's say, to the main results that, let's say, in our study, we are reflecting on this evolution to show that, of course, it's critical for companies to understand the need now to be sustainable, but also what are the needs for platform users, no, to let's say to exploit these opportunities in order to improve their business models and to provide value also to their partners. Then on the other side, also you see here that just 1 second that I need to move here. Okay, perfect. Yeah, let's say it is a continuous and dynamic, let's say, process for the platform. Now, in order to be sustainable and competitive in the market, to have a flexible structure and to evolve in this environment, able also, let's say, you see, to understand contextual factors, but also to understand what are the digital technologies that may provide value. And so, in this direction, now opportunities offered by digital technologies can facilitate the creation of novel sustainable business and strengthen and reinforce the platform technological core. And also, you see here from a platform network perspective, it was possible also, if you're interested in this study, you can see that basically it was possible to offer and to reinforce the digital competencies of not just the platform, but also their partners and to create new partnerships. So, yeah, we really understand that sustainability was a driver for the platform, not just to increase the economic and financial sustainability of the platform, but of course to provide important impact for the different actors involved, for companies donating, but of course also for the recipients of these donations. So there is a very important network effect, and let's say really the need now to use these digital technologies to capture value for all the different stakeholders. So again, we are going towards the need to create some shared and distributed value across let's say the entire network. Yeah, so again, if you are interested in this topic, this study may be interesting. So to understand the role played by blockchain as an enabler, no, of the business model to provide traceability, transparency, and to create the basis for these carbon credits that then really offer the opportunity to the platform to increase their financial, let's say, sustainability and stability. Yeah, and also understanding that platforms, and especially the ones in the agri-food industry, it's quite a dynamic context, and it's relevant to understand drivers of change, and also to have this flexibility, also to evolve, and also to let's say to have let's say this to sustain basically also the competitiveness, let's say in this context. And of course, also understanding how digitalization can contribute to food waste prevention and reduction, of course, and also extending this opportunity not just to food products, but also to non-food products. Okay, so we are now at the end of this second, let's say, part of this study. And we had the opportunity to reflect, again in collaboration with Caterina Trevisan and also Melly Pullman, an emeritus professor at the University in Portland, and also to reflect on the value of food waste. Our question was, is wasted food just waste? Or should we reconceptualize food loss and waste in operation supply chain management? And so it was basically a more conceptual, let's say, discussion, trying also to inform scholars in, of course, supply chain management, but also then at the interface with agri-food and agribusiness. And let me just summarize, and I really hope this can be also an opportunity then also for the discussion later on. Uh, yeah, we understood that there are many paradoxes and many trade-offs when we talk about food loss and waste in our, let's say, supply chain research and also practice, right? Because on one side, let's say, supply chain management scholars have been used to, let's say, to approach, let's say, supply chain management with efficiency. Many times we discussed about the lean perspective, the Toyota approach, just in time, zero waste, minimizing inventories, trying to be efficient with lean supply chains, no? In the context of cost reduction. So this is a mantra that has been pushed, of course, it's central, let's say, to supply chain management. But the question is, how can it work in the context of agri-food systems, which are also dynamic, which are also very exposed to weather, to the environment? And also, there is a very important social component. There is a social impact of agri-food supply chains. And the key question is, can we use this zero waste optimization of efficiency approach, or should we also consider the impact of sustainability, the impact on society, the impact on the environment? And probably, of course, using just this optimization, cost reduction approach maybe is misleading. While on the other side, also companies, now they are somehow managing this trade-off, and knowing that on the other side, for retailers, for example, it's interesting to have some extra capacity, no, some opportunity to serve the customers with additional service level. And again, there is a trade-off between efficiency and let's say quality of service. So the key question in our opinion is what is the opportunity on one side to achieve efficiency but at the same time to provide the right service level, but let's say as the basis also to have a supply chain in the agri-food context which is sustainable from the environmental and social point of view. We believe that there are many open questions and we need to, let's say, to address these questions. And we are urging, let's say, supply chain management scholars now to reconceptualize the way also we're approaching food waste, not just as operational waste. There is additional value in our opinion. Also, I was mentioning from a sustainability and also from an ethical point of view, right? And also the key question is, how can we, for example, also have additional, let's say, food resources at different levels of the supply chain? Because, let's say, with a zero waste, zero inventory, let's say, supply chain, then we don't have an important, let's say, input for redistribution. Many charities are working thanks to redistribution. And of course, people in need receive important, let's say, support with donations and with redistribution. So, and I know it sounds like a paradox, but let's say potential, let's say, loss, waste, or at least redistribution may play an important role for charities to support people in need. And so there are some avenues for future research, really in terms of how can we find balance between efficiency, service level, sustainability, and feeding people in need? And then also to this to this goal, also what is the role played by digital technologies? So I tried in the previous slides to show you that, of course, there is a very important contribution offered by digital technologies, but we still need to see also, again, how we can use them to achieve not just efficiency, process improvement, but also social and environmental impact. And again, we go back to governance mechanism because we've seen examples of digital tools, but we still need to see how companies can use digital tools and they are supported by contracts, incentives, or different types of collaborative approaches that may be useful to support the implementation and to also to reap the benefits of these technologies. No, also in a context of agri-food supply chains, we really know that there are many issues in terms of also contractual power. We know that many times the power is in the hands of strong actors of the food supply chain, usually retailers, food companies, and we need to find a way also to support also, let's say, actors in the supply chain with lower bargaining power, for example, farmers and many other actors, and also in the context of developing countries, emerging countries where there is the need to support actors that are positioned in a lower, let's say, contractual position, right? And of course, also the fact that when we talk about food loss and waste, we have issues on safety and security, and there are many issues of responsibility and accountability, when donating food. And so, in that direction, we have problems of perishability, and we need to find, let's say, effective solutions also to address this problem because many times many companies are afraid of donating food also because there may be very important issues of responsibility donating, for example, food that may create healthcare issues, right? Good. So now we are finally at the moment where I'm trying to bring together, let's say, in this journey, different, let's say, these different perspectives. And we had the opportunity let's say, to receive the funding from the Italian, let's say, Minister of University and Research for this PRIN project. That means it's a project of high interest and it's relevant at the national level, focused on digital technologies and social sustainability. So really, after working for a few years on these topics of digitalization and social sustainability, the opportunity to continue this investigation beyond food loss and waste and going back, let's say, at the different levels of the supply chain to understand how digital technologies may play an important role for fair distribution of value. What do we mean by fair distribution of value? Again, as we said many times, contracts may be, let's say, not very beneficial for actors. Now, how many times farmers may be price takers? So, especially for commodities, if farmers or suppliers are interchangeable, right? How it's possible to create value not just for buying companies, but also for farmers, for example. And what are the governance mechanisms that may support the development of win-win solutions for the involved parties? Let me tell you that during my PhD, I was focusing on that topic, especially focusing on pricing and negotiation in a context of pricing that usually it's a sort of win-lose type of, let's say, of relationship. Usually, if there is a negotiation, one of the players is going to win, the other player is going to lose. And it was a challenging question. How can we develop solutions where somehow there is a win-win type of outcome for the different parties involved? I will come back to this in a few slides, also presenting the case of Barilla, which is one of the companies we are interacting with, and also this is part of my previous research, also trying to connect with this topic of digitalization and value redistribution, showing how the Barilla case may be a very good inspiration also for the adoption of digital technologies towards value redistribution. So, the key objectives of our PRIM projects focus on the investigation of how the adoption of novel digital technologies in the Industry 4.0 domain can provide beneficial impacts on fair value allocation in agri-food supply chains. And of course, it is impossible just to implement a technology. We need to have appropriate governance mechanisms that are able to support and to enable new and resilient business models. And for this, let's say, project, I mentioned we are working also with the University of Genova, Palermo, Salento, in Lecce, in the Apulia region, and Udine, in the Friuli Venezia Giulia region. These are the key research questions. So what are the new types of governance mechanism, for example, contracts, or different types of negotiations, or different types of relationships that are emerging from the adoption of new digital technologies? Then, what is the impact of digital technologies on negotiations? For example, new types of incentives or an internal profit redistribution along the supply chain and supply chain relationships. And also, we are interested also what are the new business models enabled by digital technologies and their implications for more equitable agri-food supply chains. So currently we are working with the different units in order to map, first of all, what are the main digital technologies that are adopted in the agri-food industry. We're having a focus in the Italian industry, especially focusing on key products, for example, pasta, wine, oil, fruit, dairy. So understanding what are the main products for the national economy. And of course, we go back to the established technologies, blockchain, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, platforms. So you can see, of course, we want to map a diversity of different actors throughout the entire supply chain, of course, from fork to fork, let's say, including farmers, food companies, distributors, retailers. And at the moment, we are, of course, trying to understand the implications of sustainability with a strong focus on social sustainability at the interface with economic sustainability. Because we are interested in fairness, fair, equitable redistribution of value across these different actors. No, so you see here, for example, one of the focus is equal market and information access, fair value redistribution, food security, and of course the opportunity to use these resources to further develop, let's say, developing communities, increasing the livelihood of communities. So currently we are working with our partners in order, let's say, to focus on this research framework and with different focus. For example, the colleagues at the University of Udine are focusing on the wine industry and also the role played by some important, let's say, initiatives also developed by institutions. We have the colleagues in Palermo using a more quantitative approach, also focusing on contracts, using a more game theoretical approach. We have the colleagues in Genova focusing on platforms and business models, and our colleagues in Lecce, the University of Salento, also focusing on the implementation of digital technologies, also with a strong focus on AI. And here in Trento, we are responsible for managing and guiding the project, and our main focus is on fair value redistribution and social sustainability, bringing together all these different actors. And why is it relevant? So let me spend now the final, let's say, 10, 15 minutes connecting to the Barilla case. Barilla case, which for me is central. Now we are keeping in touch also with Barilla, and these are the results of my research and collaboration with Barilla in the last few years. Also, we had the opportunity to publish parts of this study, I was mentioning the fact that in the agri-food industry, let's say the complexity and the dynamism is very, very high. And in the last few years, there has been a very strong fluctuation of the durum wheat price. And durum wheat, of course, is the main ingredient for pasta. And of course, especially in the last few years, especially considering the geopolitical tensions with the Ukraine war, there has been a lot of let's say impact on the price of durum wheat. But let's say this has been quite common, let's say, in the durum wheat market in the last 15 years. And I was mentioning the fact that there has been limited also focus on negotiation and collaborative negotiation, win-win negotiation in pricing, especially from a supply chain perspective. If you're interested, we published a literature review article in 2016 discussing the role played by collaborative pricing. How can we develop a more collaborative approach, leaving, let's say, the zero-sum game towards a more mutually beneficial approach in pricing? And again, connecting to governance mechanism, how can we use basically uh, contracts as a mechanism to implement on one side, of course, an effective negotiation, but also to achieve sustainability goals. So this is the case of Barilla, and I'm using this case a lot also in teaching sustainability, and I believe this is also very important because it's guiding, yeah, also research in the context of digitalization as well. So the key question is how can supply contracts can be used for sustainability across the three dimensions, so environmental, economic, and social, and much more in detail. How does Barilla use supply contracts to achieve the desired goals on profits for itself? So for sure, no, the opportunity to achieve financial goals for the company. This is extremely important, but also at the same time to make sure that the farmers are able to achieve something more. And at the same time also to offer improved practices that are kinder to the environment. And we collected data also in a longitudinal manner, interacting with Barilla. We did many visits also to the company. And also, if you're interested also in the more mathematical implications of this study, also we published a study discussing from a mathematical point of view basically the implications for these contracts. But let's focus more on the qualitative part of this study. Now, I'm not, let's say, spending too much time on Barilla. Probably you're already familiar with Barilla, especially in the US, because Barilla, they also have their production in the US, and it's possible to find their products. It's an international company, and they have many different product lines, not just pasta, but also, for example, in Italy, also they are very famous for their bakery products and sweet products. They are focusing on many different markets, many different geographical areas. You see different brands, different product lines in many different parts of the world. But what was very important, that Barilla had a clear strategy, and they included in their sustainability strategy many important also operational objectives. So these were the objectives for 2020, to double the turnover, which was quite a challenging, let's say, objective, but also to reduce their emissions basically by the 50% in their supply chain. And in order to achieve these objectives, they were taking an integrated approach in procurement. And here you can see a sort of schematic picture of their durum wheat supply chain. So Barilla basically buying durum wheat in Italy through cooperatives and consortia. You see here that are basically representing many different farmers, and of course reaching directly to seed suppliers. It is very important to understand that it was critical for Barilla also to identify specific varieties that work well in different geographic areas of Italy. And everything was also starting from the need to reduce emissions. For example, Arizona is a very important area for the production of durum wheat, but of course you may imagine that there is a lot of need for water, irrigation, and then also transportation to Italy. There is a very strong impact, right? That's why Barilla, for example, identified a specific variety called Aureo, and they were able to grow the Aureo durum wheat variety in southern Italy, able then to cover their need for high quality durum wheat for their premium brand, which is Voiello, which is 100% Aureo durum wheat. In this way, reducing the impact, their carbon footprint and also the water footprint. So this is an example of a vertical collaboration throughout the supply chain, but there is also an objective for Barilla to create a collaboration at the horizontal level. You see here, then extending this focus and this learning from the durum wheat supply chain also to other supply chains. For example, the sugar supply chain, the beetroot supply chain, which is very important for Barilla also because I mentioned they also have a product line which is the bakery products in Italy. We usually we have breakfast with sweet products, and Barilla is the leader in this market. And so this is really the representation for Barilla's sustainable supply chain. You see here a supply chain which is then focusing with relationships directly with breeding companies with specific varieties able to increase the quality but also the sustainability of their product. So for sure, Barilla was investing a lot in collaborations with their farmers and suppliers with the objective to address new varieties. I was mentioning the example of the Aureo variety, managing quality and sustainability through the supply chain to steer also new approaches for cultivation. And you see here something that I was mentioning, new pricing formulas. When I had the opportunity to identify Barilla as an interesting case study, for me it was really an opportunity to open to open my eyes with a new example in collaboration in pricing. And we will discuss about these techniques in the next slides. And of course, then the focus on sustainability. So integrating quality with sustainability. And you see here a clear mantra for Barilla, good for you, good for the planet. And that was clearly integrated in their supply chain strategy and in their sustainability strategy. You can see here that, of course, there has been an evolution of the concept of quality for Barilla. First of all, quality. Quality should be, of course, good and good tasting products available to the market, safe for customers. And Barilla was able to become basically the leader in the industry in Italy, becoming probably one of the most important industrial companies in Italy in the food industry in the 80s. And then the concept of quality was becoming intertwined with sustainability. Because it's not just about good taste, but also sustainability and help and support for communities and, let's say, of course, a broader social sustainability also perspective. So how it's possible for Barilla to achieve these goals? So you see here that the project is very well connected with our research project because there are many initiatives. Of course, geographical diversification. Of course, this is about risk management and also quality improvement. For example, in Italy, it's impossible to have the right amount of durum wheat production. We are relying on many other countries: Canada, US, France, Russia, Ukraine. But given the current, let's say, the current tensions, it's very difficult, let's say, for procurement. And knowing that also in Italy, it's not just a problem of quantity, but also of quality, because in Italy, not always it's possible to achieve the right quality level. So it was important to push, let's say, the quality improvement. And also the problem was that Barilla was relying on farmers without contracts, and Barilla sometimes was exposed also to a more opportunistic behavior of farmers, right? It means that they need a contract to secure basically a specific amount of durum wheat at specific periods in time in order to support their production. In this direction, cultivation contracts also are very important to increase quantity, quality, and also for risk management purposes. And so this is a very important table, as you can see here, which is showing what is the contribution of the tools developed by Barilla to achieve quantity, quality, and also pricing objectives. And I want to focus on cultivation contracts, these integrated supply chain contracts, because, of course, to achieve a minimum quantity to support the production at the Italian level, to achieve a quality improvement, and usually quality is measured in terms of protein content in order, let's say, to achieve what we call the al dente texture with pasta. And of course, pricing to make sure that Barilla is able to pay the right price for the products, but at the same time, also farmers are achieving a better value redistribution. So also farmers are not just price takers. They can receive additional value, but also they have the opportunity to choose different pricing techniques that are more appropriate also with their, let's say, with their risk aversion behavior. Yeah, everything is starting from our, you see here, from our evaluation, of the impact of the processes at the supply chain level. Of course, for Barilla, it was extremely important to focus at the cultivation level because there is a very strong impact on the environment at the ecological point of view, the use of land, the carbon footprint, so carbon emissions, and water footprint, the use of water. So let me just now finalize giving you a quick overview of the contracts. Barilla was able to develop contracts in the last 10 years. No, more than, sorry, more than 10 years, 15 years, developing, first of all, a collaboration with farmers, with the support also of institutions, and first of all, variable price contracts with quality premiums, no? Because it was clear that there was the need to create an incentive for farmers. And especially in 2007, they faced a huge problem. There was a risk, no, for farmers to leave the market because the price of durum wheat was really reaching the minimum. So they had to offer a very important price premium to farmers to keep them in the market. So they understood it was important to create a new pricing mechanism, mixing, of course, a sort of minimum price, this partially guaranteed price, and also then basically the market price, including price premiums. So we investigated these partially guaranteed prices, showing that, as I was mentioning, farmers are not price takers anymore. Barilla is offering them a mixture between a sort of guaranteed minimum price and then the market price, which can fluctuate, of course, with then an additional quality premium. And farmers, they add a sort of bracket and they can choose basically the percentage between the minimum guaranteed price and then, of course, the fluctuating price with quality premiums. 2012 was a very important year for the introduction of sustainability guidelines and providing also the support to farmers to receive not just a quality premium, but also sustainability premiums by following specific, let's say, guidelines and also using a digital tool, which is a decision support system. For sure, the results were very important for Barilla, able to increase the procurement of Italian durum wheat, local durum wheat, you see, by 30,000 tons to 90,000 tons in the early years of this initiative, and providing value to the farmers, able to receive a more stable monthly cash flow over the contract period, and so many interesting insights. And Barilla was able to increase the local procurement and increasing also the impact on sustainability. And these are the main pillars of the sustainability contracts. This decalogue, which is based not just on common sense, but also on many important, let's say, suggestions offered by Barilla to the farmers, and the use of this important initiative, which is a decision support system, granoduro.net, which is a platform integrating weather information and then recommending farmers to use fertilizers, nitrogen, and so providing important advice to optimize their production. And if farmers were using this decalogue and the Durum with the granoduro.net decision support system, they were able to receive these sustainability premiums for their wheat. And these were offered basically for free. So Barilla is investing in these important initiatives. So these are the main results. We are now, the objective of the project is to continue the investigation of this very important initiative, but in the early years of the implementation of the sustainability contracts, Barilla was able to achieve these results in terms of reduced direct cultivation cost for farmers, improved yield, reduction in the use of fuels, reduced carbon footprint, and better nitrogen efficiency. What was very interesting, it was possible for Barilla to increase also the quality, the protein content for the durum wheat you see here in the Emilia-Romagna region, basically where Barilla, they have their headquarters and their most important mills. And finally, here we are at the end of the presentation, probably with the most important slide. This is the representation also guiding our project. How can we use, of course, digital tools, and in this case, specific governance mechanisms like supply contracts to create shared value? You can see here, we have the three different, let's say, opportunities for Barilla to buy durum wheat. So the Italian market without contracts, the local market, which is the light column on the right. Then we have the green one, which is, these are the Barilla's supply cultivation contracts. And then, of course, in yellow, the cost and the price of importing, basically, from international markets. So you see here, the farmers are able to get extra value. So if they are basically signing the contract with Barilla, they will get extra value in comparison with the national local market price. And of course, Barilla is saving in comparison, let's say, with the international import market. So I think this is a very good, let's say, explanation, and let's say also to show that it's possible to create value and to share the value. So everyone is winning. And this is supported not just by the governance mechanism, which is the contract, but of course also the digital tool, which is in this case granoduro.net. So these are the opportunities to bring together the economic, the environmental, and social perspective. And of course, now in our project, we are building on these case studies, building on this research, let's say now really trying to understand in detail also other case studies with digital technologies, new business models, and the focus on value creation and value redistribution across the supply chain. Because we believe that sustainability can become a part of, let's say, operations and procurement processes. And of course, sustainability has the opportunity to translate in better operations, more effective, more efficient, at the same time providing value to the different stakeholders. And basically, we are overcoming this trade-off. No? In supply chain management, there are many different trade-offs. And these are opportunities to go beyond these trade-offs and provide value for all the actors that are involved. So better operations enforced through contracts can really create shared value for companies and their suppliers. So this is our, let's say, our research. I would like to thank you for your attention. I hope this can be the starting point for a conversation, for a discussion. And again, I would like to thank Michelle and Greg and all of you for your attention. Happy now to answer to your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we have Lindsay. Lindsay, hello.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I
Thank you.
direct a really small nonprofit in Oregon. We partner with local farmers. We try to, do a lot of farm to industry. So whether that's institutions, businesses, direct to consumer, we really try to support local farmers, really expand their reach. We do have some contract solutions in place for them as well. And then also we cater to some local food equity efforts. So through grant funding, we can purchase food directly from farmers, donate it out to people in need. So my question is, so digital is wonderful, but like how does that translate into the physical ability to make this work? So in other words, like how does the physical distribution of the food for donation work? You mentioned that when food is resold or reallocated, it just happens. But who is financially responsible for the staff time, the delivery van wear tear mileage, food safety monitoring that needs to take place? How is capacity, so like staff or business time, farmer time, to do this reallocation ensured? So especially in nonprofits, when activities are grant dependent, we might not always have the funding to implement these models. And then these seem also like really time intensive. They seem really strategic in order to incorporate these into businesses. So where does one find resources to do what Berea did and like develop the sustainability strategy with these concepts in place? Who can help with that so that platforms can actually be used?
This is a great question. Thank you, Lindsay. For example, it's difficult to provide an answer. Let's say, at least from my experience, working with Trentino Solidale here in Trento, we really noticed that the resources are provided by volunteers, for example. And for example, this group of volunteers, this charity is also filling many institutional voids. For example, the municipality is somehow expecting that this charity will provide food and they will play a role to redistribute. Yeah, so let's say in our case, everything is based on this volunteering approach. So this is a great question, and it would be, in my opinion, very important to continue, let's say, the investigation to understand how we can make the processes much more sustainable and identify the resources. Then, for all the steps you mentioned, so making sure that the food is okay, so is healthy, there are no risks, and also to arrange, for example, distribution and logistics. Yeah, because for example, in this case, again, here in Trento, Trentino Solidale, through grants, through donations, they have the money to arrange every day the redistribution to people in need. But of course, this is just based on resources offered by donors or by the charity itself. What is the problem here? We need probably to rethink and also to see what is the role played by institutions as well to provide resources. For example, in Italy here we have regulations. Usually retailers may get tax relief if they are donating surplus food. How can we reuse then maybe these resources or probably we should get some resources now to create processes that are effective to redistribute these surplus food. Sometimes there are also some critical, let's say, discussions. The fact that retailers they also reap the benefits, they can keep higher inventories now on the shelves. They can get uh, higher, let's say, service level, and they can claim back also this tax relief. So maybe sometimes it's not sustainable or should be a little bit more balanced. Probably, maybe in France there is a different regulation which is somehow punishing the retailers who are not then able to redistribute food, who are throwing away food. In that case, maybe these resources could be useful to structure a network to perform a better redistribution. I think these are open questions, to be honest, and this is a great point. So the question is how can we make sustainable even the process of then redistributing? Because of course this is an additional burden, of course, for small, medium, let's say charities and non-profit organizations. They have to manage all these critical processes. Lindsay, I hope I replied, but for me it's an open question, to be honest.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But there is Peter.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
I
I know.
really enjoyed your talk. Grazie mille per la sua
Prego,
presentation. See,
prego.
okay, so I teach the Barilla case. I've taught it for a number of years in my supply chain courses,
The
and it of
just-in-time
course,
one, right?
it gets into the bullwhip effect and these ripple effects in supply chains. And so when you were talking about the information and digital asymmetries of the technologies early on in the literature review, clearly upstream, there were more technologies employed than downstream with the retailers. And it got me thinking, are there are those asymmetries causing some bullwhip effects? Are they causing some volatility with information being asymmetrical? So it's just a thought I had as you were presenting.
Haha, that's a good question. To be honest, we didn't manage to measure this. But for example, in the context of food waste, it would be interesting to understand to what extent we have information flows and if this is having an impact on the effectiveness of redistribution, right? That could be interesting to investigate. To be honest, we didn't have the opportunity to measure this type of bullwhip effect. But of course, probably the important question is how can we make sure that we are able to now to exploit basically the power of digital technologies. And we are expecting that digital technologies they should increase supply chain integration, so they should have a beneficial effect. Probably the problem is to make sure that we are able to spread these technologies and to empower also the different actors, also to use these technologies. Yeah, the Barilla case is showing that in order to drive the implementation of these decision support system, it's crucial also to provide sustainability incentives. So only if you're using and mapping the usage of this platform basically, then you can claim the premium price. Yeah, I think this is still an open question in terms, especially in food waste management. So it's difficult to yeah, to monitor quantities because probably we go back also to the previous question, right? We're still trying to find effective processes for redistribution to connect people in need with potential donors. Everything looks quite fragmented, and again, we have these actors that are left to volunteers. Now we are continuing this research also with other let's say studies. For example, with Caterina Trevisano, also we're trying to understand who are the volunteers, who are the donors. Also, how can we identify different type of donors? Maybe that could have an impact in facilitating donations. That could be also interesting because at the moment probably donors are perceived as just one group, and maybe then we can have different incentives, we can have different approaches to maximize donations, and then maybe facilitate also donations and the process for redistribution. So yeah, but this is an interesting question, and in general, let's say we need to yeah, to increase the focus on measurement and monitoring. So thank you, Peter. I hope this is a good answer. So that we can try to consider this as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I think there was Veronique.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you for this presentation and for this this case of Barilla, which seems to be an interesting case of corporate social responsibility. I was wondering actually to which extent this case and the project implemented by Barilla is really radical in its approach of sustainability, transition, transformation, or rather incremental. Because you can have like objectives, for example, reducing inputs, farm inputs that are rather incremental, but that do not really address the fact that the whole cultivation system may be unsustainable on several aspects. And for example, that the scheme put in place just pursues the same system and does not approach more like radical approaches that also question the rotational system, the association, the use of several varieties. And linked to that, I just had a look at the paper, and I saw that basically your sources are really exclusively based on Barilla and like the management in Barilla. And so linked to the first question, I was wondering whether you may have had also like different inputs to your research based on other actors who are not related to Barilla, including agronomists, environmental organizations that may have tempered a little bit this very positive approach that transpires from your research on the scheme. So it was more a question of, like, are there questions to be asked about that or not?
I completely agree, of course. I don't want to give just a too optimistic, let's say, focus on Barilla. For sure, let's say, let me tell you, this is a project which is driven by the need Barilla to become, of course, more sustainable, but at the same time also to increase also economic results, knowing that, however, there has been a lot of investment in sustainability, let's say, initiatives. So I think there are many global, let's say, in the company, many different initiatives. And I had the pleasure to visit Barilla, let's say, and also to experience the meaning of sustainability in many different processes. I was trying also to get the perspective of their farmers, and I can assure that, of course, we need also to understand that there is an opportunistic, let's say, behavior from both sides, of course, right? So Barilla is trying to reduce the opportunistic behavior of farmers. No, and on the other side, the farmers would like to have much more, for example, guaranteed minimum price. But of course, and they're both. I can assure that also negotiations have been sometimes also a little bit more tense, and for sure, also in the last years, I'm trying now to see also what are the last developments of this project. However, let me tell you that this is an example. It's difficult to find similar examples, and would be extremely happy to see if other companies are using similar approaches where somehow there is the interest on both sides to create a collaboration. There are some new pricing technique, innovative pricing techniques. To leave this win-lose type of negotiation towards a bit more collaborative, no? Yeah, probably this is part, I was telling, a sort of integrated approach in sustainability. Probably also in the last few years, even big companies like Barilla, maybe they reduce the focus, they are struggling a little bit. So it's not an easy process. Also because there has been a strong investment, because this is offering for free to the farmers the decision support system, the guidance for improving the quality. So there is a strong investment also from this point of view. But of course, let me tell you, if you're able to teach the farmers to be more efficient, we are also expecting that then they will sell you the product at a lower price. So there is also an economic interest in this direction. But for sure, what we are trying to understand now with this project right now, and Barilla may be one of the cases to investigate much more in depth, is of course to understand also perspectives not just of food companies, retailers, but also farmers and also some other experts in the agri-food industry, trying to have a clearer picture of let's say this value redistribution, fair value redistribution, and the way digital technologies may contribute, no? To create a basis maybe for a better value sharing. So this is our objective. And I completely agree with you that we need to go beyond, of course, the perspective of the single company, trying also to see the relationship, the different also perceptions of the different actors. That will be extremely important. And we will try to do this as well. For example, right now we are doing some interviews with companies also in the wine industry. Also, let's say, also trying to get, for example, the support of cooperatives, also then of different institutions that are helping to protect farmers, for example, in terms of insurance, risk management. Knowing that a very important element which is emerging that of course companies are becoming very very careful about the economic results. So I can tell you that really when you're interacting with companies, they mention sustainability. Of course, they are very interested, but sustainability should have also some tangible economic financial results. Probably a few years ago, sustainability, even maybe leading and pioneering companies were investing a lot. Now it's becoming a little bit more challenging. We're living times that are a bit more unstable, much more uncertain, and sustainability should also have a sort of payback period.
Yeah.
This is what we are understanding.
Yeah.
It's quite tricky also to find other examples of companies innovating and also risking with more different approaches. But probably if sustainability is still an open question and it's a bit more risky, a bit more difficult to approach, on the other side, companies they seem to be a little bit more open to digitalization. It seems that the investment on digitalization seems to be quite more tangible, let's say. So that's why probably we can reach sustainability through digitalization, but at the same time, we need to see really what are the governance mechanisms that are enabling the implementation of digital technologies, also to achieve some sustainability results. So this is my point of view, and this is what we're trying to investigate in this project. And also, if you have comments or suggestions, I've seen also now in the chat some links, and we will take care, let's say, of these recommendations. Thank you very much, and happy to continue also then, of course, offline also this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronique. And now there was a Catherine. I cannot hear you, Catherine. Yeah, Catherine, you raised your hand, right? But yeah, it's not working. Sorry. It seems you are muted, even if
Can
no,
you
it's
hear
not working. Yes, now, yes.
me? Right, sorry. Thank you very much for the presentation. I wondered if you could zoom out a little bit, and this question is probably unfair because it gets a little bit away from your data, but I think we're also interested in this case because you're we're thinking about how we can translate it and transfer it. And so I'm wondering if you can help us situate it in the National Italian Food Framework. So why would Barilla be encouraged to start on this path? Are there mandates that are in place for companies that are in Italy? I know Italy has a famously strong food co-op culture, and so there's probably, I mean, just a different culture in addition to a different national framework encouraging. And we in the US don't have those similar financial or necessarily cultural supports that are propelling, for example, food co-ops.
Yeah, of course. Let's say focusing on the contextual, let's say, characteristics of Italy. Yeah, you're right. But for sure, food products are extremely important. Let's say for the Italian, economic, let's say, structure, right? But then also you mentioned cooperatives. No, cooperatives are very, very important. However, let's say also I was mentioning in the 80s also the growth of very important food companies like Barilla, but there are many other important companies that were able now to push now the growth of the Italian industry. Yeah, also the fact that probably we were also discussing also with Michelle in a previous conversation, the fact that also Italy is quite a small country, let's say. Also, let's say it's quite easy to transport and to move goods around, right? So let's say it's quite easy to connect farmers with companies and also with customers at the end. Probably these are the characteristics. Yeah, then in terms of regulations, honestly, I think yeah, I was mentioning in the food waste context the fact that they are trying to be more supportive rather than punishing no, for food waste. No, so more encouraging food redistribution. But let's say in terms of sustainability, to be honest, I don't see let's say strong focus, let's say on specific, let's say regulations. So let's say that was much more in the hands of companies, no? Probably that transition from quality to sustainability and the narrative that Italian products are good but also sustainable. I think that was the strongest, let's say, push towards sustainability. And the fact that at a certain point, probably there has been a sort of institutional effect. Now, many companies they share the same message. No, we want to feed no our customers with good and sustainable products. Yeah, I think these are the main factors pushing towards sustainability, let's say projects. Yeah, but it would be interesting also to discuss this. But everything is started, let's say, my opinion, from especially important food companies that are leading the way also, let's say, towards sustainability. But let's face it, everything is starting also from operational improvements and let's say projects that are industrial also in a way they want to achieve economic and financial sustainability first of all. I hope, Catherine, to have positioned at least the Italian context, and probably now I will connecting also to the previous answer, the fact that right now probably sustainability is much more, let's say, understood by companies, but at the same time, it's a risky, more unstable moment, and so probably there are the low-hanging fruit, let's say, projects, but much more, let's say, strategic projects are quite difficult probably to see. Uh, yeah, it's a challenging moment to see also, to see sustainability at a higher strategic level rather than more opportunistic approaches in implementing sustainability. I can assure companies are struggling a little bit more in investing in sustainability. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Really an
Thank you.
awesome presentation. I think we've learned
Thank
a
you.
lot, and I'll be posting a summary of your talk online probably within a couple of days. I'll send it to you first, though, for your approval.
Thank you, thank you. I hope it was an opportunity for, yeah, to create discussions, some collaborations, and really, yeah, now going back also to the topic of artificial intelligence. Also here we are working on AI in our department. So if you are interested also in continuing this discussion, it may be interesting to develop some project or some collaborations also considering AI. So today I was not focused on AI directly, but of course there is a very important, let's say, potential also in this direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for joining us today. We really welcome your collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Michelle, thank you again for the invitation, and looking forward to keep in touch. And of course, you can find my email address, which is marco.formentini@unitn.it. But you can find me easily on LinkedIn or on the internet. Thank you.